There is nothing wrong with your radio stream. Do not attempt to adjust the stream. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the frequency. We will control the pitch. We can echo the sound, make it stutter. We can change the focus to a soft voice, or sharpen it to crystal clarity. For the next show, sit quietly, and we will control all that you hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your radio stream. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from our inner mind to awaken your limits. Awake Radio, controlling your stream to unlock your mind. Tune in to Awake Radio at awakeradio.us. Awake Radio.
Thank you for tuning in to this Tuesday, December 23rd, Organic News here on Awake Radio. In the first hour, we have actually 3 guests. The first hour is going to be talking about TIs, which I just myself learned about recently, targeted individuals. One guest, Mr. Derek Robinson, president of the human rights organization Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance. This is a group, you can look it up online. Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance is a group that all 3 of the guests are a part of. The group has been in existence since 2005, addressing issues of organized stalking and remote electronic assaults. The secret research and deployment of these devices and techniques affects multitudes of people in this country and the world who are mostly unaware of their existence. Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance seeks to raise public awareness of the human atrocities that are occurring as the result of the abuse of these technologies, as well as congressional hearing and investigation to expose and stop the perpetrators of these crimes. January 2011, Derek Robinson was featured in a program by Canadian TV show host Richard Syrett for his conspiracy show. Derek was consulted extensively in Jesse Ventura's 2012 season of Conspiracy Theory for an episode entitled Brain Invaders, interviewed by the Washington Post in 2006, appeared on KMIR TV in Palm Springs, November 2012, for their new story about electronic harassment. There's actually 2 more paragraphs, which I'll read quickly. In 2013 and 14, Derek Robinson was featured in the Super Soldiers Mind Control Summit in Las Vegas, Nevada, and has spoken on numerous radio talk show programs around the web, such as George Noory's Coast to Coast AM, Kerry Cassidy's Project Camelot, The Legacy of a Nation, and Pinky to Pinky. Robinson holds bachelor's in speech and theater from Ohio Wesleyan University and a certificate from the Broadcasting Institute of Maryland. Derek Robinson can be heard regularly via the organization's Saturday night podcast on talkshoe.com. So, Derek Robinson, welcome to Organic News here on Awake Radio. Yeah, Derek, unmute your mic.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kathy. Appreciate being here.
Let me, I'm going to introduce now Peter Rosenholm, a targeted individual for 20 years, ran a computerized machine shop before his business was shut down after 9 years. Company broke into phone tapped. The company was phone tapped by police. His marriage was broken up. He was experimented on with microwave weapons like MEDUSA, which he'll explain what that is, and V2K, voices and subliminal. Hospitalized and tortured with MEDUSA, mock executions, forced suicide attempts with the help of voice cloning and torture. David Rosenholm, are you there?
Peter, yes.
I'm sorry. Pete?
Yes, yes, and along with the Jesse Ventura, I was filmed by Jesse Ventura, and consulted with him after Fred Bell had been killed. I've spoken with Derek at the Super Soldier Summit, and also with Kerry Cassidy, with Derek as well. So we've been together for a long time.
I'm just going to introduce, there's one more guest, Kenneth Posner, who you're also a targeted individual with the Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance organization. You were in the military. You were just telling me you were a TV producer in Hollywood.
Yes, I was not in the military, however.
Right. And so how okay, I guess Kenneth, go ahead. You tell your story of how you came to be a targeted individual in Hollywood, or.
Well, in my case, it goes back to 2001, and I was getting gang stalked very heavily by neighbors where I lived, gang stalked by police, publicly harassed. When I'd go out, when I'd go interstate and travel, very heavily by the police and the public, identified, to be falsely arrested by the police, again harassed by the public, and direct energy weapons to my body, microwave, along with microwave hearing, which is voice to skull, and synthetic telepathy, and horrific effects to my health, radiation.
For what was the purpose of and what, why you?
What had also happened is my sister I had seen her brutally tortured and murdered under mind control and direct energy weaponry. And I don't say that lightly. Just absolutely brutal. Then they came after me after they had murdered my sister. During the time which they were going after her. This is hate-based. This is tremendously hate-based and retaliation-based.
And who is doing it, and why did they go after your sister?
Well, and this is also financially based. There was financial motive. There's other family members, unfortunately, involved, as I've come to learn, for the sake of financial motive and retaliation. And at this point, there have been identities made to the feeling of who the parties are involved. I can't say anything about that yet, though. But I know that this is police-based and military-based.
Okay.
As I'm told.
Okay, I guess we'll move. And Peter Rosenholm, what happened to you? What? How did you become a TI? Is Peter there? Derek? Is Derek there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, I'm here.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I muted while he spoke. But, I went through very much what Ken went through. But my life had been golden. I had gone to school. I had a robotic machine shop, was doing really well. after 9 years, and you know, a lot of money in the bank and an industrial park, and all of a sudden my mail got interrupted, and then I found out later my phone had been tapped because the company next door had a faulty alarm system, and then police called me and said they found my door open, and when I got there, police were in the back, and I touched the doorknob, and it all fell to pieces.
Doorknob fell to pieces?
Yeah, no, somebody put it back together, not that well. And so this is the beginning. They surveillance you, they check you out. Next thing I know, all my customers stopped sending me work. I mean, one day, after 9 years, it just stopped. There's a lot of talk about the Justice Department gag letters, and when they were found to be illegal, they were asked what they had written and who they sent them to, and they said they have no records of it. But I knew Ted Gunderson. I was supposed to speak for him at the bioethics. He was in charge of 700 men in the Los Angeles FBI office, and he told me they used to do COINTELPRO. And they would do letter writing to sabotage people and much of what was happening to me at that time. But it went on, and then now my marriage is falling apart. And like Ken, my wife knew they were taking me down. She said, I hate to see you go down like this, and gave me a kiss and walked away. It's total life destruction. And I guess a lot of people flee from it.
And again,
it was very much like that. And, then when they finally get you isolated, they came and they rented my house, a local kid whose two brothers had been police. And next thing I know, he goes to work and there are people up there walking around. It's a surveillance, but then it goes from overt. When it's overt, it would be like a regular surveillance. When it goes to, when it's covert, it would be like a surveillance. And when it goes overt, they begin messing with you. It's stalking, sabotaging you. Then you could be hit with a V2K, which is a military weapon that sends you voices or even sends you subliminal. And when I look back to my company, I can remember thinking about, problems I had to work out with the company and getting answers in my head that weren't my own. And then, you'd say, how do you know the voices aren't yours in your head? But, sometimes they're in a southern accent. They use phraseology that's not your own. And then it just builds up and builds up, but I'd go on too long to say everything. But, these guys are going to want to get into it too. But then they start weapons testing, future weapons. And that gets pretty bad, especially if they can run you into the hospital, because doctors work with them and you'll end up committed. And then now they got you virtually in a laboratory experimenting on you in what's called no-touch torture by Alfred McCoy, when he talks about the CIA.
Right.
This appears to be an extension of COINTELPRO and MKUltra, which was shut down by the Church Committee.
Okay.
Are you aware of that?
Right. MKUltra I'm familiar with.
Yeah, some pretty sick experiments, and this is what we find ourselves part of.
So there's one more, Derek Robinson, whose bio I read first. Welcome to Awake Radio, Derek Robinson.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate being here.
Just a little bit about what happened to you and how did you end up becoming a TI?
Well, in my case, it started back in the 80s during my time in the service. I was in the Navy, and I was stationed at NSA, and that's where the organized stalking, the Navy began to stalk me while I was there, and last year my enlistment. And so eventually I was processed out. My enlistment ran out, and I came back home, and within a couple of days, I realized that they had all that harassment in the Navy had followed me back home to Cincinnati. So it was pretty brutal, those 20 years. Basically, it was about 20 years before I I realized that when the internet came along, and I found others who had also been targeted by the government and other entities, corporations and so forth, contractors. There are a variety of sources for the stalking and harassment. Religious cults are also involved. Underground criminal groups are also involved. A variety of elements. Variety of agencies, Department of Defense, Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, we believe, also is involved. So there are a lot of factors that can go into how a person becomes targeted. And I can give you kind of a brief overview of our organization, which is called Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance. We started in 2005. I was not the original founder. However, she became very severely targeted shortly after beginning the group. And so I just kind of picked up the reins and continued. Basically, we started out with about 30 individuals at that time, and we've grown from nearly 10 years ago to about 3,500. And we're looking at individuals from over 200 major cities in the United States. So we're talking about a very deeply entrenched covert operation that is very well hidden from the American public. And what we are trying to do is bring awareness to this issue. What we're experiencing is called what we call organized stalking, which is basically stalking harassment that's done to an individual by a group of people, or remote electronic assaults. And this is attacks using various forms of weaponized energy, such as microwaves, lasers, acoustic weapons, and other types. And these produce a variety of effects on the mind and or body of an individual, such as disorientation, headaches, memory loss, eye damage, heart attacks, strokes, cancers, sleep deprivation, ringing in the ears, nosebleeds, breathing difficulties, muscle cramps, just to give you a few, just to give an idea of what is possible with these remote electronics. The focus of our activism is in three main areas. We do networking and support for victim survivors. We also advocate our issues to elected officials, and we have outreach to the media and the general public. We talked briefly about reasons why this is happening, and I can cite a few things why this happens to a person. Sometimes people are activists or social or political activists, and that's one way people can become targeted. There's sometimes monetary issues, such as like inheritance or a business venture, or sometimes a run-in with someone connected to this underground matrix. However, the majority of our victims, which is basically about 60% of us, really do not know why they are being targeted, which suggests some type of covert social control agenda that is at work. And this is something nationwide. It's also worldwide. So we're also in contact with people in over 50 countries outside of the U.S. So this is something that's deeply entrenched internationally as well as nationally. For those who are victims and make their way to us, we have telephone conference calls Monday through Saturday evenings, Monday through Friday evenings rather, and our podcast is on Saturday night. We have a newsletter, we have an online forum, that way people can connect and exchange information, coping skills, strategies, and so forth. Our website is freedomfchs.com for those of you that might be interested. Also, we have a toll-free contact line, which is staffed by volunteers, and that number is 1-800-571-5618.
And what do you believe that the ultimate goal? I mean, are they just like experimenting with people, or I mean, you mentioned it, some people are activists, and
right.
I mean, so are they just what is their intention of, doing this?
Well, we can only surmise their intention because as victims, we've not heard directly from from the tormentors. However, there seems to be, when you look at the technology that they have in their possession, which has the ability to at least to attempt to control a person's mind and take over their body, that there is an immense social human agenda at work, social control agenda at work, is what we surmise is happening. Those that are pulling the strings of these technologies are doing so from a remote location, which means that they can develop this entire program without anyone realizing that it's happening.
And I wanted to ask about the voices. Like, again, can someone describe what it sounds like to hear these? I think it was Peter that was saying that some have a Southern accent.
Yeah, if you look up the definition of V2K that the Army had, and be honest, speaking to the FBI about it, it got removed 2 weeks later. But what it is, that method, and they have many, is pulse modulated microwaves. And there's a Dr. James C. Lynn who worked with that. And the basic definition says that they can send voices that you would hear, and they can send subliminal thoughts. So for many TIs, they've never heard voices, but they're getting thoughts in their head that aren't their own, and they know it.
Wow.
They're thoughts that are foreign to them, and we believe that's much of the population. In fact, for you, like, I was on a call that was important last time, and it was a radio station, and all of a sudden everyone started calling me all at once. The thought for someone to make a phone call is a normal one, and you would do it. And so they're tied into the population with this technology. And more than just us, we're just extreme versions. The voices could be, well, the shooters that have gone, what's the last one? Florida State.
Myron May.
Yeah. In fact, Derek got a letter from the shooter, and I believe 7 other people. Maybe Derek wants to tell you about that, because since he got the letter.
Actually, Dr. Farber sent me an email about Myron May. I have it saved somewhere. If someone wants to explain, right, and talk about who Myron May was, he was a guy on the news who killed 3 people in Florida and then killed himself.
Right. Well, basically what happened is that Myron May was also, he had actually become a member of our organization, and he had just really started to connect with various groups around the web, on Facebook, our group. He was just starting to become involved with the targeted individual community. He had been targeted for about a year. He was getting severely attacked with remote electronic assaults. He was, the night before the shooting, he was experiencing some really severe chest pains. He was getting a variety of attacks to his mind and body. And basically, he had decided that there was no hope for this situation. There was no way that he saw that he could escape from it. So he decided to end his life, and his goal was to do that in such a way that his death would not be in vain. So one of the things he did was he mailed out 10 packages to various individuals that he had been in contact with, and I was one of those. And in that package, the one that I received and the others, was basically a suicide letter when he talks at length about why he was doing what he was doing. He was basically making a sacrifice of himself bringing attention to the cause is basically what he was doing. We do not agree with that method. We are working daily trying to solve our issues nonviolently, and we do believe that there are ways to bring our issues to the public and to really receive help without having to resort to violence, either to oneself or to others. Fortunately, those 3 people that he shot were injured, and to my knowledge, none of them were killed. However, he was killed by the police in a hail of bullets. So he went out and just in a horrific way, but his goal was to bring attention to our issues. So that's who Myron May was. To tell you a little bit more about him, he was actually an attorney, a very successful attorney, and he practiced in Houston, in Texas. He was basically making about $150,000 a year, very successful. But one day, while driving in Florida, he was stopped by a policeman who kind of was hassling him because he saw he was driving a very high model car, and he did not believe that as a black person, as a black male, that he acquired this vehicle legally. So he kind of gave him a hard time, and he kind of told us that after that incident, everywhere he went, he was hassled by police. And that was one of the things he was experiencing, a lot of police harassment, along with the physical attacks that he was experiencing with the weaponized energy. So the pains that he was experiencing and all the other hassles that were brought into his life, he wound up unemployed. He left his job after a couple of months because of the pressure. He didn't realize what was going on. He was in search of answers. It was, for those that are newly targeted, it can be a very dizzying array of events that happen that could lead a person to erratic behavior. And he was going back and forth between New Mexico and Florida and just in search of some answers and trying to get his life stabilized again after these after the harassment and the physical and mental attacks. Finally, he did make contact with our group, and that seemed to calm him and gave him a little bit of focus. But after a while, he realized that some of the people that he had spoken to had been in the program for years and years and years, and the suffering that they were experiencing basically intensified over the years. And he decided that he did not want to live in such agony for years without any remedy. So his decision was that he would end his life, and that's basically how all that came about.
Do you think it's possible that he was sort of, driven to take his life? I mean, obviously he was driven to take his life. Right. But, I mean, that it wasn't like he was being, I don't know, like taken over somehow, or?
Well, I mean, the word I would use is coerced. He was kind of, I believe he was subliminally led to do what he was doing. I mean, led to over a series of steps over the weeks and months to eventually to end his life, which is a very common protocol for this type of harassment. And many of us are experiencing that same protocol. But fortunately, most people decide not to end their life, and they try to deal with the struggle. I just received a call, an agonizing call, just this morning from somebody that's really struggling in Sacramento. So he was complaining about pain levels that are all the way up to 10. But that's very common in our community. There's lots of people that are seriously suffering, and as yet there isn't one remedy that solves our situation. So we're trying to speak out so that we can hopefully find solutions.
I wanted to give Kenneth Posner some time to talk about exactly what happened to you.
Yes. Oh. Well, I had found that I had police. I had gone to visit my sister in Connecticut for a few days with my family, and I had reported. I was getting, when I was out of state, I was also getting voice to skull, and I had reported the situation back to local police where I had lived, to an investigator, detective bureau, just to make a report. And I came home late that evening to find the fire department and police cars out front of the house, and the fire department had broken through the back window in the bathroom, and to find two policemen waiting for me in the kitchen of the house. And they made up a story about a concern about mail piling up. And they basically, I explained my situation to them, talking about the neighbors behind where I lived, because I had gotten a lot of gang stalking harassment, verbal threats, street theater, visual theater from neighbors where I had lived, behind where I had lived, as well as around in the street where I had lived. And it was very consistent. And these people, matter of fact, had a telescoping satellite antenna on their roof, very high up. It was very unusually positioned. And I mentioned this to police, and they carted me away with no rights. I had a family member with me at that night to the mental institution, tied me to the gurney, and had the neighbors standing there, making a spectacle out of the situation. And what proceeded was consistent, forced trips to the mental hospital, local hospital, which was the doorway to the county and state system, long term, where they would commit the person. And it was a vicious cycle. And once in the hospital, I was horrifically abused. The doctor was afraid for me, psychiatrist, and the V2K and the torture was just absolutely horrific.
What did they
forced drugged?
What hospital and what did they do to you?
Injections, forced medications. I had sores all over my arms, bleeding sores, which a doctor claimed was some kind of a disease which was brought on by insects. They forced me to have a lice. A lice is what they claimed. They forced me in the middle of the night to have a lice bath, and they threw out all my clothes. I had all new clothes with me. They made me throw all those clothes out and forced me into the bath, and it was just, and that wasn't the case at all. It was just unbelievable. They had kept me in the hospitals where I was not able to see a judge for a hearing in the right appropriate time. I had to be kept much longer. Then when I saw the judge, I was threatened by the psychiatrist. I ended up representing myself in front of the judge, getting released, and then being threatened by the psychiatrist later on. But it was just, horrific. So I got what was very heavy police, interstate, and where I lived, harassment. And then when I went to report this to federal authorities in the state of New Jersey, as well as Governor Chris Christie, who was at that time U.S. Attorney General under Bush to the state of New Jersey, I got absolutely nowhere. They all said to me, go to your local police department where you live and make out a report. The local police blocked me, refused to allow me to make out reports. When I went to their police department, they would do street theater on me and have psychiatric assessment people waiting for me there, putting words in my mouth, locking me in a room. It was just unbelievable.
And when did this go on for? From like when?
I would say from 2001, and then 10 years of my life also here in New Jersey. I was kept asleep under microwave and heavy duty military CIA type mind control torture and terror. I lost 10 years of my life under this.
I mean, this is like really, really, unbelievable. It's hard to it's very unbelievable to hear and to think.
And this is after I saw my sister, witnessed her tortured and murdered to death. And what I saw from her was just...
Tell us about.
And they got me into car accidents. They would voice the skull in the car, telepathy. They had tried to... Because of this, I got into 2 car accidents. One where they had cars bang into the back of my car. I had a small Kia, and they just demolished the car with me inside it. And then I had another car. They just set up car accidents. It was just, and where police then laughed, came, opened the door. "Are you working yet?" Made a statement and laughed, and the abuse was just horrific. So this was very, very high up, obviously. And then I was told later on where I had lived, I had a sweeping done by a technician where I live now, and he said, "Well, this kind of frequency is police military."
Who said that?
A technician. But I had called contractors. I called and private military contractors, and they said to me, "I'm getting biometrics done to me and energy weaponry and signals intelligence, and I was in serious trouble and needed a federal lawyer." And that this was true.
Can you talk just briefly about what happened to your sister?
Yes, they had done very heavy mind control to her over a period of years. And along with that, I had seen her have seizures. I had seen her dislocate her arms. She was in she was rushed to the emergency room in a coma one time, and I had seen her gone to visit her in the hospital, and she was burning red. She was heated up. She was in deep sleep, so they could not wake her. Her arms were dislocated. She would wake up in nightmares crying and screaming. She would get the constant in her ears, voices, and in her head, thinking it was coming from her ears. They just absolutely, they tore her apart. They put her in diapers on her back. They had her fall, and they had her so scared that she would not walk after that for years. And they just broke her. They just physically and mentally broke her, period. And her final death, she tried to reach me. She couldn't on the phone. And my doctor didn't tell me she was in the ER in the hospital. And my family and I went to visit her, and she looked like Jesus on the cross, all laid out. She was a Christian Jew, and she was all swollen, and she had a tube down her, an incubation tube down her throat with vomit coming out, and she had multiple massive heart attacks, a series of about 12 heart attacks in the ER, and then she had bleeding through her nose and through her brain and convulsions. And it was just, and this was all in the morning of my parents' wedding anniversary. And they pronounced her dead.
And what hospital was this in?
In New Jersey, in a hospital.
Do you believe that the hospital was doing this to her also?
No. This was the active denial system, Medusa Air Force. This was extremely high-tech military weaponry technology, as well as police.
Why would they target your sister?
This was a family. They targeted my whole family. My father's now dying. They've been targeting him, his heart, and his mental state, and his physical self for a very long time. He's in his 80s. They use heavy-duty microwave on him, along with many other torturous technologies and mind control. It's been horrific, and he's now, unfortunately, he's now at the end stages of his life in hospice. And my mother's also being heavily targeted physically and mentally, as well as I am. And this is all obviously about money, essentially, about life insurance policies and money, and about taking over relatives, taking over families' money, and this is about hate, tremendous hate and resentment.
So part of your
retaliation.
Your relatives are.
Yes, I have family members involved in this. I've learned. Yes.
And they take a life insurance policy out on you and on the family, and then they do this.
Well, life insurance policy already has been taken out, and this has to do with relatives collecting life insurance money for themselves and their family.
and these relatives are, I mean, they're involved in the government.
And this also has to do with relatives who did everything they could to illegally have me set up as mentally incompetent and in every way possible, totally illegally and falsely, and in front of my face.
Oh, this is just like really
for the sake of money and hate.
unbelievable.
And my parents were both only children, and I only have the one sister. So it's been one cannot even write a book, and the trauma I've been through, I've lost over 10 years of my life, literally. You cannot even deal with any of this at all. They tried to make me commit suicide, attempt suicide several times in the past.
Is there a way for you to stop the life insurance policy that they have on you?
I'm going to try to do something legally about that right now.
And how did you find out with your sister? How did you find out who was doing it?
Well, essentially, part of what happened is my sister and I had from my parents a life insurance policy from my parents when my parents died, and relatives of my family were named trustees, and these relatives were heavily involved in having me established as incompetent, illegally and falsely, going to various lawyers to have me set up, dragging my family to lawyers, manipulating my parents. I mean, it was just unbelievable. Having trust and wills drawn up several times, and now being their financial powers of attorney, and then being in line for absolute control of finances when the time comes when my parents pass on, and any money is to be deeded.
So
insurance.
How? This.
And their own lawyer would not share information with me, and he said I needed my own attorney.
Do they admit it? Do your relatives kind of?
No, but I finally had a conversation last night with their son, and it came out that there was a lot of family manipulation on this, on what's going on. So I put two and two together, and this involves conversations with bankers, politicians, lawyers, and family members, and agreements made. And this is somewhat also Illuminati, very much so.
Holy! This is talk about truth being stranger than fiction. And so what is going to happen at this point? How? What can you? Any three of?
Oh, it's my father's dying now. He's 88. He's going to be in hospice, going to hospice. My mother is on her last legs. They're only children. I don't have family, any close family members. I have family that is doing this to me as a part of them. I opened up conversation with their son, who's decent. I'm going to be meeting with him and talking to him. But I've been absolutely left alone in this situation right now. Absolutely left alone and made to be broke, and isolated. And I live in southern New Jersey now. I live 5 miles outside of a joint military base, Air Force, Navy, and Army. And I get constant drones directly overhead. I get remote neural planes, satellites, and helicopters constantly over the house, along with planes over the house, and constant activity that of interest to myself. So I had testing done in the spring, very intense electronic investigative testing, and it revealed just horrific about what's going on. I really cannot speak about that right now because it's a matter of a legal course of action right now.
So you said that you're trying to get in touch with a certain lawyer, a federal, you were referring
Well,
to?
I'm seeking out assistance from attorneys right now, legally, as far as options. I'm speaking to lawyers, and right now interviewing attorneys and interviewing any options with that right now.
And how is that looking? Are they able to?
I've spoken to one party. I've spoken to other parties. I still have to get information and make decisions in the process.
Have they ever?
I'm told that I still need further investigation into the matter as far as source goes and such. So none of this is easy, and it's also a matter of me getting monies from family members, which is my own money to pay for things. And I've been left in a situation where I'm terribly vulnerable and been terribly manipulated by the system. So
I mean, it sounds really like unbelievable, like just unbelievably.
One couldn't write the book on what I'm going through right now.
And so a couple of you mentioned Jesse Ventura. I mean, is he able to help? I mean, other than, they had his conspiracy theory show. Is there? I guess it's pretty limited to what people can do. Other than, does anybody want to speak to, like what is to be done? I guess to just get the word out about.
Well yeah. As far as solutions for this, Kathy.
This is Derek Robinson speaking.
This is Derek. Yeah. As far as solutions for what we're experiencing. Okay, first of all, I will explain to you that we have been to many various types of officials seeking assistance. We have been to Congress. We have been to, and none of them have been of any assistance whatsoever. We write to them, they respond with a form letter. We call them, they ask us to send information, which we do, and then we don't hear back from them. There are people in our group that repeatedly go to their congressional representative seeking assistance and are consistently denied help. We've been to our state officials, and similar things happen there. We have been to human rights groups, and none of them, the ACLU, Amnesty International, all the major ones you can think of, CCHR, a lot of them that are the major ones. We've been to all of them, and we have gotten the same response, that they say that there's nothing that they can do to help. They cite budget reasons, they cite many other excuses, but the bottom line is none of them, particularly the ACLU, that seems to be the one that most people would feel would take an interest in civil rights or human rights abuses, but they have consistently denied every single individual. I'm talking about hundreds of people that have come to them for help. One day we wrote a petition. We took up like 300 signatures, and we gathered these documents, took them to their main office to make sure that they would see that this is a major problem with hundreds of victims, and something that they should have a look at. And hand delivered it to their office in New York City, and we have not heard a word from them.
Hey, Derek?
So we're talking about some major denials here, but so I guess the most important thing that we can do is if we want solutions, we are going to have to create them. So speaking out is one thing that we can do, and that's what we have been trying to do at every opportunity.
I've heard of, like they just released the torture report recently, and what's been going on there, and who's involved, and who needs to be held accountable. But what you're describing just is it's really, it's just stuff, of Hollywood movies that Well,
it's torturous as well. However, what we're talking about, the CIA, this report about the CIA is basically hands-on torture. And what we're talking about is what's called as no-touch torture. And this is implemented by frequencies, by various weaponized energy methods that are designed to actually induce any type of condition or health condition upon the human mind or body that they wish. We know one scientist, a British microwave scientist, that has a list of over 600 frequencies and the corresponding effects on the human body. So as long as they can induce these conditions remotely by frequencies that no one can see or hear, they have been getting away with actually murder of hundreds, thousands of people, over the past few decades. So we're trying to bring all of this, these atrocities, as every much as we call it the secret Holocaust, because it's every much as lethal, as horrific. The suffering goes just as deep as what happened during World War II, during the Jewish Holocaust. So, and actually it comes from the same Germans that produced the Jewish Holocaust, or actually were brought over here through a secret operation called Operation Paperclip, and continue to work on mind control technologies for the U.S. government. So we are still experiencing the Holocaust, actually.
Exactly. I mean, we hear about chemtrails and, HARP. I'm sure you've heard of HARP.
Right.
Weather modification, the poison, food supply, plenty of things that they talk about on InfoWars, Alex Jones, things like that. But I mean, yeah, this is, it's going to be, it's going to just be, and is becoming more and more just out in the open. I mean, they're not going to be able to just do it so subtly.
Well, I mean, if we have our way, if we continue as we are going, and we get more people like Jesse Ventura who are willing to feature our issues, and more, we're seeing more series on TV in Hollywood that are taking up our issues. There was a recent episode on a series called Stalking or Stalked or something like that. There's a series on Wednesday nights on CBS, and they featured an episode about gang stalking. So even Hollywood is becoming aware of our issues. We're continuing to reach out to the entertainment industry as well. And sometimes they do listen and they take up our issues like Jesse Ventura did. So Hollywood sometimes is starting to feature our issues. So we are slowly getting the word out to the American public.
Again, there's so many, like tonight they're having a shut down Fifth Avenue, march against police brutality. These two police officers were shot, and they're using that as an excuse to, they're trying to blame the protesters for this single loose person that shot these two cops on Saturday. I mean, it's just like trying to get people motivated, to really accept that things like this are going on. I mean, it's hard enough to get people sometimes motivated, just to stand up for their rights. This stuff is extremely deep and frightening, and but right, I mean, it needs to get out there in order to to stop it, or else it is going to be frightening. Like, that's what people need to realize, that by exposing it and challenging it, we're actually making it less frightening. I mean, is there any, does anybody just want to share maybe what's being done, any working with anybody in Hollywood or?
Could I interject here?
Yeah, sure.
This is the Cold War, and this is a frequency war right now. We have a Dr. Trower who was an expert. And much of the Cold War was trying to figure out who had this technology. And they interrogated with it. They destabilized people's minds with it to get information out of them. And this is the Cold War continuing and moving on to the New World Order, because this is worldwide. We had an international call, and this is happening all over the world. So this is very big.
You mentioned...
Excuse me, this is also Project Bluebeam, which is NASA, which is a part of the New World Order situation, and a part of holograms, using holographics.
Yeah.
And
right, this is the New World Order, as he was saying. This is a component of that. The mind control technologies that are being employed today. They're deployed in all the major cities across the U.S. and worldwide. But yet, all of this has remained secret.
Veterans today quoted in Syria about what is going on. And it's the New World Order and the domination of the world. And they talked about some of what we're going through as synthetic torture, which is now another name that I've heard to describe it. But they're mentioning that America is controlling through conflict.
Right.
And we're seeing it every day. We're living it every day. And now we're seeing it on TV. How many wars have we been in?
Yeah, well, nonstop wars. Has anybody heard of Barry Troman?
Barry Trower.
Trower.
Barry Trower.
Trower.
Oh, his name is Barry Trower.
Yeah, Peter just mentioned him. I mentioned him earlier as well.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to clarify, because in an email from Dr. Farber, he has him written down as Barry Troman, but it's Trower is another TI whistleblower.
Yes, and he's a gentleman from England, and he's given interviews, and he supported us. Like Ted Gunderson, he's a few years back now. They're advancing all the time. There are scalar waves. There's heterodyning. B2K can be done with S-quad, with microwaves, with silent, all these different methods they're developing, and every day they have more.
We have about a minute and a half left. There's a question. I'm getting a question for you. Have these attacks followed you outside the normal areas that you frequent? Can going to remote areas prevent them from using some or all of the technology?
Well, with me, and I'm a rare case, I can a lot of times be let go when I leave home to a certain distance. But for the most part, no. They can hit you anywhere. There's no way to stop B2K, for instance. There's speculation that it's either ELF or scalar waves. But one of the shooters wrote, "This is my ELF weapon," with the naval yard shooter.
Aaron Alexis, yeah.
Aaron Alexis. And Aaron Alexis was working with the Navy at the time, and he must have had knowledge about these weapons.
Again, we have like 20 seconds left. Does anybody want to share the last 15 seconds?
This really is going to be a world war, but it's a secret war. And they have secret troops all around you. They're in your neighborhood. This was like the Stasi in Germany. And it is a world war, but almost no one is aware of it.
Right. We're going to have to unite in order to overcome it. If you feel that you are stalked covertly, you can reach out to our organization. We're at 1-800-571-5618. Thank
you, Derek Robinson, Peter Holman, Kenneth Posner, all from the Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance.com. Thank you very much for being on Awake Radio.
Thank you, Kathy.
We'll be back.